Thank you to Doctors Raja, Arwin, and Mayco for your stimulating and thought-provoking presentations. We hope to hear from the audience their questions and comments. Please type these on their chat box, or you can raise your virtual hands and I will call on you. Perhaps to start the ball rolling, I'd like to throw in a question to our panelists. You have all approached the concept of boundaries in music in different ways through the lenses of religion and spirituality, popular culture, gender, and socioeconomic and political relations. And to speak of boundaries naturally implicates identity, which is one of our conference's keywords. With all of this borderlessness that has happened, the rise of liminal spaces and porous border zones that are forever changing as globalizing processes take place as well. How can you now define the ethnic identity of the cultures or sectors of people and groups and their music in your papers? Like, for example, for Dr. Raja, is the Haqqani Maulid Ensemble still an Islamic group playing Islamic Sufi music? For Dr. Mayco, is the shared Kulintang heritage still Malay, especially in light of James Warren's follow-up book to the Sulu Zone, Iranun and Balangigi, Globalization, Maritime Raiding, and the Birth of Ethnicity, which takes into account the larger economic and more modern contexts? And for Dr. Arwin, is the Filipina woman of the early American period, exemplified by Atang's Angelita and Sesang, still Filipina? I mean, what do these names mean now in light of defining a borderland identity from Dr. Sui Beng Tan's talk earlier?
All right. Do I start first? Yeah.
Yes, anyone who would like to start. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Patricia. Okay. With regard to the Haqqani Maulid Ensemble, the Haqqani Tariqat or Sufi order is rather new to Malaysia. I mean, it's only been around for about 3 years. I mean, as compared to the more Naqshbandi, the previous Naqshbandi has been around for centuries. So, but this new order of Naqshbandi, it offers a more like a transnational, more urban, modern version of Sufism. So it kind of crosses boundaries. It offers like, I mean, a chance to go global in the sense that I mean, they have a global appeal rather than the previous more localized sector or localized order. And it attracts a lot of young urban youth into the group. And music offers a more, it appeals. I mean, music plays an important role in this particular group where it appeals more towards the youth. And it becomes a more vibrant rather than it's compared to from the kampung or the village version of Sufism. It is more, so this group, it reflects a more modern, you can say, transnational, international, and many of them are English speaking, highly educated, you know. So you can like process those kind of boundaries in a sense that it is no longer viewed as something which is village centered, you know, lowly educated. It kind of like, it has opens up a more international appeal. So I guess from that kind of view, if you can look at the religious boundaries, of course, now you see there are these heated debates going on among Sufi Muslims in Malaysia with regard to Sufism and also Wahhabism. So it kind of like crosses these spiritual boundaries, which is now being debated, whether Sufism is allowed in Islam, and then the extremism of Wahhabism and so on and so forth. So Haqqani Music Ensemble kind of like crosses that kind of a boundary. It appeals to both the majority of Muslims in the country and also for those practicing Sufism within the Tariqah concept. So it's kind of like interesting to see this music plays an important role. The
Yes.
revitalization, yeah, of the old practice of Maulid, for example, and even the Maulid itself is now being questioned whether it's permissible in Islam or not. So it kind of like it creates a new kind of a discourse, from Islamic point of view, from theological point of view, and also social point of view, where you find like youth are becoming more attracted to the religion through Sufism and through music. So you kind of have multiple boundaries there. So yeah, it's kind of like interesting to see this kind of development in Malaysia at the moment.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Raja. Who would like to speak next? Dr. Mayco?
Okay, I'll continue, given the second question was for me. Yeah, I think in general, basically, what I'm trying to do is revisit Warren's concept of the Zulu zone, which are mostly dealing with historical links in the region, and that we're dealing with trade and different forms of negotiations. So what happened, generally speaking, in the region was that after independence in Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines, in many ways there was an increased process of nationalization of policies and especially cultural policies. Hence, marginal regions tended to look more towards the capital cities increasingly. But then after going through the Reformation era and what we can maybe conceive as the post-national present at the moment, there's kind of a look back at these cultural regions, especially within the borders of these nation states. And there are a lot of communities, particular minority communities and marginalized communities, that are kind of looking for alternative links, not just cultural, but also economic and social links. Hence, I think that these festivals, for example, that are being carried out, such as the Regata Lepa Festival in Sabah, in Malaysia, are not only a platform to celebrate cultural idioms of that region, but are really bringing people together, I think, in the present day, given that a lot of communities from the southern Philippines and Indonesia are actually flying and making it a point to attend the festival to connect with the communities from that region. So it's kind of an interesting, I think, experience that is happening at the moment. So hence, I think we can, I'm trying to just argue that maybe we can posit the look of this region in the 21st century as a cultural complex. Yeah, that would be my answer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Dr. Tan. Your audio, is your audio on?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that question. And what I can say is that Filipino women, even as early as the 20th century, already were trying to practice alternative modernities. That was that was introduced even also as early as the late 19th century, and even during the Spanish period. And the stars, which I have mentioned, actually only one, it was only Atang de la Rama. She represents that idea of a Filipino woman who used the stage to using her performative her performances to bring about a new kind of an image for the Filipino woman, which would be later on reverberated in many other forms of entertainment, such as vaudeville. We have Katie de la Cruz, for instance, and then in cinema or in film, etc., etc. So we have television, also radio, and in this particular paper, I highlighted Atang de la Rama because I focus on the Zarzuela productions. Actually, I only used 2 songs to try to convince that there was some kind of modernity in the way they perform their gender. But there's really a problem also because it was, as Dr. Tremilios has mentioned, it is looking at it through the gaze of male librettists and composers, which I can discuss later. What I would like to focus on is that this kind of modernity is some kind of going back to pre-Hispanic Filipino, because we have learned that some indigenous tribes or ethno-linguistic groups were actually matriarchal in nature, and which was somehow contradicted when the colonial experience happened for 300 years or more. And so as early as the American colonial period, and with the emergence of popular music and radio and recording, we see that somehow Filipinas were given a hint at how they can navigate this imposed limitation of the patriarchal society of the earlier colonial engagement with Spain. So that went on until our present day scenario, in which we have plenty of alternative ways of showing gender performances and performativity by Filipino women. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we are looking at, in terms of identity, we're looking at a collective of specific modernities, a cultural complex, and multiple identities or borderland identities in terms of the cultures and the groups that you've discussed. Thank you. Now let's go to our participants on the chat. There's a question here from Rowan May Opiso. For Raja Iskandar, where is the Sufi music coming from? Any localization? How have the participants crossed boundaries? Does this contribute to the banning of this type of Islam?
Okay, all right. Thank you. I think the question comes from Prof. Tan, I think. I'm sure. Yeah, right. If we look at the history of Islam in the region in Southeast Asia, it is all attributed to Sufi scholars and Sufi traders coming from the Middle East and also from South Asia in the 13th century. So if you look at Malay hikayats or Malay chronicles dating from the 13th, 14th, 15th centuries, has been stated that Sufi practices like Maulid and also Zikir has been performed for centuries in this region, including the Malay Peninsula. So Sufi performance, including vocal chants and also music, has been there for centuries. So especially Maulid, the Maulid procession, the Maulid celebration has been around. And it is this particular Naqshbandi Haqqani Sufi order, which has been around for only about 30, 40 years, which has been banned by the Malaysian government. But if you ask about the crossing of borders, I would say that even as a marginalized group, they were initially just practicing and performing within their own circles in their Zawiyah or their Sufi lodge in Kuala Lumpur. But there is a sense of resistance. There is this feeling of resistance saying that, hey, we are not going to be marginalized forever. We want to go out and spread our music and spread our message. So from then on, not only from that marginalization from within Islam itself, within what is practiced by the majority of Muslims in Malaysia, So they went out and performed in public, even appeared on TV, even using the word Haqqani. I mean, obviously Haqqani, Nashabandi has been banned by the state. So the fact that they are using the term, the word, the word and the group Haqqani itself, knowing that they've been banned by the state, I mean, it shows there is a sense of resistance there. And apart from that, they also perform overseas. I mean, they cross national boundaries, and they were accepted in the UK. Even though initially they were seen as with skepticism from Muslims, from Sufis, from other parts of the world, but later on they were slowly accepted as a new, not to say innovation, but a new vibrancy in, or a new way of expressing their love, and through music, which has been, even though it's been around in Malaysia, but some other parts of the world, they're still skeptical about using music, for example, in their performance. But this Haqqani music ensemble, Maulid ensemble, managed to penetrate that. I mean, of course, through their guru, which is Sheikh Nazim. So from that point of view, I mean, in terms of you want to say crossing boundaries, I mean, they really cross both spiritual boundaries at home, and also they cross these state boundaries overseas. They are still technically they are still banned. They're still I mean, the teachings of the Haqqani is still banned, but the Haqqani music ensemble, they're still performing everywhere in the country. Hope that answers the question.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Raja. I see questions coming in, but this is a quick follow-up to what you just mentioned. I just like to ask, with the ensemble's very close connections to capitalist enterprises, entrepreneurial links like Islamic fashion, investors, product launches, business opportunities, because I checked them out on the net. It appears that the ensemble occupies a space in society allied with all these. Is this a trend in Malaysia, which is on the rise now? And how does this sit with conservatives?
Yeah, especially in urban areas. You can see, like, for example, now we have, for the past few years, we have like these Muslim fashion shows, international fashion shows, attracting Muslims from all over the world. I mean, new trends coming in. So it's kind of like Islam has become rather trendy in urban areas. So I see Haqqani Maulid Ensemble, they are part of that movement, they are part of the trend. And we have this young, highly educated, English-speaking urban youth performing something which has been around for centuries, but they have put some vibrancy, some modernity into it. So it kind of like, and also it fits well with the current image of urban youth, like they call it the hijab stars, wearing hijab but with modern styles and everything. And also, if you notice, this group, they also wear something which is like kind of like bohemian kind of like style, some quite different from the old rather traditional way. Maybe their skull caps, usually they wear just white, but this Haqqani group, maybe some of them wear like very colorful dress, colorful skull caps and all that. So they have a distinct. Yes. They're trying to create something which is modern, which is hip, basically trying to hip, which is what is traditional in that sense.
Yes.
So yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting. That's another aspect of identity that you just mentioned, identity as a trend. Yeah, all right. Yeah. Questions are coming in. I'm sorry, the first question that was answered was sent by Sui Beng Tan. Now, this is a question for Dr. Mayco. Do you see the sharing of diversity or homogenization taking place in the Kulintang ensemble, since there is interaction across borders today? How about the moving of Kulintang across continents?
Okay, thank you to Soybeng for the question. I think this is an interesting question, because it's not like we can clearly differentiate what is traditional and modern in that sense. Even if you look at the traditional repertoire, for example, the tunes from in Central Sulawesi, from the Kaili and the Toli Toli, are actually linked to in name and also in terms of the structure to the Ida Nun in Sabah, which are descendants of the Maranao in Mindanao, in the southern Philippines. So we can actually trace links to earlier, I think, exchanges that took place in the region in that sense. And there are also pieces that are named after different regions, in some cases kind of imitating, or let's say it would be a local imitation of a piece from another region. Yeah, so within, let's say, the traditional pieces, you already have a sense of sharing that takes place. Now, within the modern context, and with these, let's say, festival platforms that have been emerging, I think rather than maybe affecting the tradition, what would be considered the traditional repertoire that is used for ceremonies and rituals, there is more of an influence. I would say two kinds of influences. One, in the development of new music and dance pieces in the regions, because ensembles are no longer imitating what's happening, let's say, in the capital cities, but are imitating or let's say, taking influence from what's happening within the Zulu zone region itself. So that's one aspect. And the other one is actually in the development of popular music in this region, with influences from the electronic keyboard. So the forms of adaptation and development of new songs that are representative of the local ethnic groups are actually are somewhat homogenizing, I guess, the region as well, yeah, through popular music. So this is something new that I definitely have to further look at. But yeah, so there's I wouldn't, maybe in a way there is homogenization taking place, but I would say it's a rather somewhat organic homogenization, in that there are already a lot of cultural traits that are shared and cultural markers that make the Zulu zone a cultural complex in itself. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Mayco. And this is a question for everyone. What are the important lessons, strategies, which can be learned from the colonial period experiences of Filipina and Malay women artists, which can empower the current generation? This is from Dulce Blanca Punzalan, to everyone.
Who will go first? May I go first?
Lessons learned. What are the lessons learned?
It's quick. We learned from this paper that what is important is to exercise a kind of agency of a free thinking and not limited kind of existence. So as we have seen in many of our histories, we have shared histories of colonialism, and such colonialisms have brought into our way of lives a lot of appropriations, a lot of negotiations of how to express our culture. And I think what is important is for us to bring out all these diverse cultures. So to allow for the expression of plural, or say plurality of culture. And as such, although we belong to the same region, we try to exercise respect for these distinct cultures that are subcultures that are apparent and that are seen in our bigger Southeast Asian culture. So I think that's the main takeaway, whether it's in the form of border crossing of race, gender, or identity. It's I think basically the best lesson to learn is really to learn how to respect and advocate the presence of the plurality of our different cultures. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Arwin. It's addressed to everyone.
Mayco?
Okay. I'm not sure if it's entirely related, I guess, but one thing I could mention is that maybe an interesting phenomenon that is taking place is that, well, traditionally, women were the carriers and performers of kulintang, the instrument, and the carriers of the tradition. So after what happened was that after independence, at least in Indonesia, for example, there was this new genre that was developed, was called kreasi baru, or new creation, that was used for the development of new pieces in which time men kind of took the lead with new compositions and performances, especially when going outside the provinces to perform in other regions. So I think now within the so-called post-national present that we're living, there's kind of this wave to revisit this kind of kreasi baru approaches, and to actually go back to the traditions and bring back women to the forefront, and have women performing new creation pieces following the heritage of the place. So this is kind of the phases that have been experienced by women, I guess, for kulintang cultures, at least in Central Sulawesi. So maybe that would be my answer for Malay women, but I'm sure Dr. Raja would have much to say as well. Yeah.
All right, maybe a short one, because I'm not into. I mean, yeah, maybe based from observations. I mean, as we know, I mean, women have been involved in the arts in the Malay society for centuries, for ages. It's just maybe now there are more opportunities to, for example, like really study about, for example, like artists now they have a chance to further studies, become artists, and also become researchers, become academicians. And I think the opportunity given now is more as compared to before. I mean, the background was different, economic, social background was different, and also the dynamics of politics and everything, it was different back then. But now I think women have given more opportunities to be in the forefront, especially with technology. Now we have like colleagues, women in PhDs, ethnomusicologists, all over the world, especially in the Malay world. In Malaysia, we have more and more women into the arts, and then also into academia. So I guess there's a positive there's a positive growth in women, not only as performing artists, but also in other areas involving the arts, especially in academia. I guess that's maybe my brief observation.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Raja. But how come there are no women in the ensemble? But I think that's a question that will take a long time to talk about.
It's another session.
That's another session, because that's a boundary that has to be broken through. There's an interesting question on the chat. It's for Dr. Tan. While I agree with your gender analysis, this is for Dr. Tremilios. While I agree with your gender analysis and the portrayal of female agency in the two zarzuelas, the analysis is a bit troubled because the words the females are singing and the characters they are interpreting come from librettos written by males. Ilagan for Nabasag ang Panga and De Los Angeles for Angkiri. How does this gender crossing complicate our analysis? That's very interesting, because I think if it's a paradox in this patriarchal society, it's the males who are the immediate enablers of female empowerment through the libretto and the writing. So how do you explain this, Dr. Tan?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Tremilios, for that very difficult to answer question. Okay, I will try. Um, um, what we see in the two songs that I have highlighted, the Nabasag ang Banga and Ang Magandang Pilipina, are images of the woman or the Filipino woman or that is crossing borders in terms of identity and in terms of socially imposed limitations given by the patriarchal, the hegemonic patriarchal power. However, I think that it is, although troubled, I think we can see that in the performance of these songs, we see the agency of these stars being brought to the fore. Even if the words were like the gaze of the male towards how they see women as liberated or somebody who's different from the typical Maria Clara image. It is, I think, in the various performances of these songs that the women stars improvised, included dances, and I'm definitely, they also have incorporated body language that was more important than primarily just looking at the text or looking at the songs, because first, and the song Nabasag ang Banga is in foxtrot rhythm, and the other one, the Masayang Dalaga, is in habanera. Both are danceable tunes, and I could imagine that in their performances, these women were also dancing. And when we give freedom to actresses to improvise on the stage, many of these actions and probably not rehearsed actions also showcased a different way of women showing how they can take the persona of that character from the point of view of a male librettist or a male composer. So yeah, I hope that could that could help answer the border crossing lens. Yes.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Tan. You know, a panel like this deserves more time to thresh out these issues. We have how many minutes remaining? Can we entertain one more question? SJ, where are you? Is SJ one of our students from the College of Music raising her hand? Yes.
Relating to Dr. Dominguez's question, you mentioned also how Filipinos, especially in modern times, manage to find ways to navigate the patriarchal landscape. But there definitely still exists in some circles the perspective that women need to find a male figure to help her fight for her rights. So in effect, there are instances where women's voices still get silenced in the sense that it's like she still can't speak for herself and needs someone else to do it for her. While I believe that men definitely need to be more vocal in their support of feminist issues, how do you reconcile this admittedly tricky scenario of needing to help uplift women in music industries and more, but without white knighting? And also, have there been movements in the realm of Filipino theater or the music industry as a whole to further the discussion on these feminist issues? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that question. I'm sorry I did not get your name.
That's SJ, one of our musicology majors.
Yes, SJ. Yeah. Many things can be done now to propagate this kind of respect for female rights, women's rights. For instance, we already have a very active way of advocating or showing, coming up with rules that we have to give a certain number of days more when females go on a maternity leave in the workplace. And then, so rules such as these given by the government are steps in bringing out equality. And in fact, I find that some of these rules that are being presented or that are being implemented now are more favorable to the women rather than men. And I think this is a big step for us. In terms of cultural expressions or cultural performances, I think we don't see much discrimination on women performers anymore, as much as we have seen perhaps in the past. It's in fact, in addition to women, we also have other marginalized groups such as the LGBTQAI+, which are seemingly given that kind of treatment. But these groups have formed associations, institutional support to help them navigate through this difficult way of fighting the patriarchal society. So I would like to probably disagree with the statement that we are still facing much problem on trying to come up with equality. Perhaps what we can say is that we have already started coming up with more regulations, more laws, and to support female artists.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'm afraid we are losing time for our discussion, and we definitely need more time for a topic like this. Thank you. We'd like to extend our thanks to our three panelists, Dr. Raja Iskandar, Dr. Mayco Santaella, and Dr. Arwin Tan for a very fruitful discussion. Thank you very much. Our three speakers have shared their thoughts on boundaries in music. Through Raja Iskandar's presentation, we've seen how the ensemble negotiated in colorful ways boundaries in religion and spirituality, traditional and popular urban culture, and artistic expression. It did help that their own tarika was a dynamic and progressive one with a porous appeal, elastic borders, and exhibited ludic qualities, which, however, did not diminish meaningfulness of purpose. The ensemble has broken barriers in ways formerly inconceivable, such as zigzagging boundaries between public and private spheres, formal rites and sheer entertainment, religious and secular gatherings, past and present, and using instruments that are not only Malay and Arabic, but African and Western as well. It has burst out of its original Malay Islamic contexts to a variety of multicultural music venues, changing Islamic listening and performing practice to an inclusive, flexible, borderless, even nationless one. An immediate example of which is academia, in which we find ourselves situated in right now. And heightening all these is the ensemble's online presence. They're on Apple Music, they're on Spotify, SoundCloud, where boundaries are absolutely non-existent, and where the listening experience, while communal, is also very personal and individual. In Dr. Arwin's work, we've seen how the boundaries between idealized prescriptive and quotidian pragmatic performance worlds blur through two song examples from landmark Filipino zarzuelas in this period, engendering multiple identities which voiced out new Filipina modernities in tune with the zeitgeist of the times. And the first decades of this period, American period in the Philippines, were perhaps very intoxicating times with so many new ideas and modes of expression, such that the concept of the Filipino woman wasn't simply a category of gender, but a site of contestation, wherein the workings of female power caused boundaries of morality, behavior, home life, and professional life to shift necessarily. And it is in this sense that we view gender best as a discursive construct, an upshot of struggle and discourse more than a biological reality as brought to us through the zarzuela songs. And in Mayco Santaella's work, which draws on Warren's groundbreaking book, we see boundaries giving way now as then, fostering interconnections and interdependencies among the groups in the Southeast Asian sphere of the Sulu zone. The zone was an arena of conflict, resistance, tension, but also of adaptation and what we call in Filipino as pakikisalamuha or encounter, and pakikisama or trying to fit in and get along, which show how fertile the zone was and remains to this day as a site of constant negotiation, as seen in Kulintang music and its creative aspects. In the post-national period and with the present nation-state divisions defining borders, there, however, exists a distinct borderlessness, which embraces the peoples and cultures of the area as kin and extends its reach out and beyond, even as it circumscribes. This borderlessness is formally brought on by various geopolitical agreements, such as trade concessions and festivals, and informally by movements of goods and peoples. The shared Kulintang tradition, with its nuances and commonalities, will remain dynamic and imperishable, for as boundaries remain, these also simultaneously and antithetically give way. And as a final thought linking all three papers, boundaries help us humans to structure and give order to our lives, thus our basic human needs. Yet these shift and open up constantly to reveal liminal interstitial spaces in which music making thrives in new ways and forms. And this perhaps may be perceived in the end as the greater human need. So thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed our panel discussion. And